move chairs around or what? Like everybody that's involved in this window.
The air quality that you need now.
Keep everybody outside be aware of.
Would you mind just taking a round and letting me know where we got the outdoor? Hang by.
Okay, gentlemen, Mountain Lifelight has reviewed the proposed Lassen County EMS transportation plan, and they took exception with two specific paragraphs within that proposed transportation plan, and they also appear in the draft RFP that has been circulated.
And the board hasn't received copies of that yet, that I'm aware of.
Transportation plan we have
Okay. That we did,
Got the draft
but the RFP we have.
the draft RFP is not out yet.
Okay, and those, and my understanding, the state still has not acted on the transportation plan. The page, you'll note that these two sections appear at page 10, line 5, and page 13, and they relate to inter-facility ambulance transports. And so you understand what we're talking about. There's roughly about 24 of these a year, at least last year there's roughly 24. To the next slide. And these two sections in the RFP have no benefit to Lassen County residents because of the following areas. It removes an ambulance that's currently providing critical care. In other words, if they're in the RFP, they will have to pull one of their ambulances off to assist in that transport. Currently, Mountain Lifelight, and for over 20 years, Mountain Lifelight has a designated ambulance that takes these inter-facility critical care patients from the hospital back to the airport to be flown. Most of these, in fact, nearly all last year were fixed-wing transports. We're not talking about helicopter transports. Helicopter lands at the hospital and they're loaded on. These are fixed wings that transports that have to be taken from the hospital to the airport. And Mountain Lifelight staff, because they have specific training, they're above the normal training that is provided by your ALS ambulance paramedics. Go to the next slide. And they have these are trauma patients that generally need blood while in transport. They're patients with a high-level infection that needs antibiotic infusion, and then there's the heart attack patient that will need a pump for nitroglycerin infusion. These patients, generally, the staff that are currently transporting the ALS paramedics aren't qualified to give the first two. The third one, they can utilize a pump, but those ambulances presently are not equipped with the pump. So they have to either borrow the equipment, they're trained on it, or not is another issue. So because these presently have been transported by Mountain Lifelight, when this was suddenly taken out and put in the RFP, obviously Mountain Lifelight is concerned and wanted to address it. One of the next slide. One of the issues that we want to point out, back in January 2004, the EMS operations that were available to Lassen County were roughly 6 ambulances, 2 in the South Lassen EMS, 2 Lassen ambulance, 1 critical care transport that was Mountain Lifelight, and then Modoc County, Modoc Medical Center in Aden had one. Flash forward to December 4th, 2004, the services were at 3 ambulances in Zone 1 through South Lassen EMS and 1 through Zone 2 in Modoc County. At that point, our chief our county emergency services chief, Chip Jackson, declared an emergency because Lassen ambulance had withdrawn 2 ambulances. And several of you on this board, I think, have that history in mind. There was obviously a payment issue that wasn't coming from the state, and they made a business decision to no longer provide service. But under that emergency declaration, our current EMS operations are at that same level. In fact, they're a little below that because North County doesn't have an ambulance presently. So we're operating today at a lower rate or equal to that rate that an emergency was declared in this county. And if in exchange for deleting these 2 paragraphs and guaranteeing that Mountain Lifeline continues to utilize the vehicles that they have, utilize the staff that they have, they are prepared to offer to North County a 12-year deal which would guarantee an ambulance service in North County. 12 months. Or 12 months. Did I say 12 years? Yeah. That's a little longer. 12-month deal that would provide an ambulance service in North County. I can't tell you, I wasn't part of the discussion process why North County was left out of the present plan. I don't know whether it's a cost issue. I don't think cost could ever justify not providing ambulance service to our county residents, but that wasn't the choice I was involved in.
At the time when that plan was created, they had service and they did not want to change the service they had, so they actually opted and wanted not to be included. So it wasn't a question of they were like all of a sudden kicked to the curb. Since that time, their service level has dissolved or disappeared, so now it's a different ballgame, and we obviously have to deal with that issue.
They asked, specifically they asked, we do not want to be part of your EOA.
Yes.
That is why they are not in it.
Well, as part of Mountain Lifeline's proposal, they will provide a complete ambulance service there. They support the Big Valley community. In fact, they've already had some meetings there discussing how that proposal will benefit the community. It will also include membership plans, both ground and air, for that portion of the community out there. So I'd ask you to consider it. We're happy to sit down and discuss fine details with the board, but I think in exchange for what we've asked to be given to the left out of the RFP and maintain the level of service that Mountain Lifeline presently provides to the community, I think it's important that you look at the overall picture. What Mountain Lifeline has provided this community for 30 plus years is a viable entity that supports, pays tax, hires nearly 35 people in this community, and any attempt to kind of erode their little bit of market share may be the straw that broke the camel's back. So we've asked that you look at that, you determine the viability of the plan, and you give some feedback. We're prepared. I believe it's about 45 days out, depending on NorCal's involvement, to put an ambulance up there. They're prepared to commit to that today. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. More than we have time for, but they make it sound pretty easy to put an ambulance up in, I guess you could say in Aiden. Would it be Aiden? Would it be Beaver? Knowing the cost of an ambulance, and the small amount of calls up there, it's not financially feasible.
Well, I know that has been said, and that's been the justification, I think, for leaving it out of the RFP. And it's there is a slim profit margin, if any profit margin, but I think for whatever reason that's been a choice to leave that out of the RFP, and I don't think it's a viable one. I think our county residents deserve more of it.
Wait a minute, again, if you left out the RFP because that was left out of the EOA and they don't want to be part of that EOA.
Well,
It's
today,
not our decision. This board didn't make that decision. The people made that decision. I do know the history.
but the fact are, as it says here, it is left out of the RFP. And MoDOT, North County is without ambulance service, and we're trying to
And they just voted down, what, a $45 tax, which wouldn't even take you and me out to lunch. If you have their own, they voted it down. And then the next agenda item is to put that back on the ballot. So, I mean,
And that will take approximately 12 months or so to get that back on the ballot, I'm told. And so Mountain Lifeline's offering a Band-Aid of some sort to provide.
well, my concern is what is the of some sort? Is it reality or is it just a political move?
Well, obviously, we're in the position to provide ambulance service. They,
It's all people that say. And so is mine. You know, I mean, they're all. But anyhow, you asked the question, right?
any questions?
I can answer to that, actually, more.
State your name.
My name is Brian Gray, Program Director of Mountain Lifeline. We had a similar situation about 10 years ago in a small community, Greenville, in Plymouth County. This was an area that had both a hospital and an ambulance for many years. A lot of the residents, elderly, rural, ranching community. And as times as they were, things diminished, deplenished, and went away. They were pretty proactive. They did basically what Big Valley's doing now. They're trying to form a JPA and create an ambulance district. They did get a tax $65 a parcel. And basically with a little bit, even then, we went in there without truly a contract or anything else as a commitment to the community. Over time, and it has worked out. They run a few more calls than Big Valley does, but we are able to financially sustain a full-time ALS ambulance 24/7, 365 in that community, and we have for over 10 years. We just renewed our contractor over there, and the IVASA board is extremely happy with us. We are content to be there. It basically covers its own cost. We're not wheeling any money out of that county, but it covers itself. It gives us a chance to provide jobs, and it creates the coverage that it always had. This is a similar situation. That's why I think
That's good, and I'm thankful for you. I mean, I've always supported you people. At the end of this month, I've been on this board 16 years. I've always supported you. You support the country, the county, and the community. You're good people. No problem there. Go back to Greenville. I think when you went in there, my wife grew up in Jersey. She said there is a ambulance tax people voted on years ago to form an ambulance, and you people are receiving it. Is that not correct?
yeah, that's correct.
So you are getting a subsidy.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There is not one available in Ada and Beaver.
And it's my understanding that the last one did not pass by a very slim margin. I think you'll hear from them today. I think they're trying to redo that.
But I guess what I'm saying is, you're not going to promote off this. You're using Greenville as, we went in there, we fixed it. You also are collecting a subsidy from the community to help you make it work, which I'm appreciative and I'm glad. I'm not trying to put you down,
I
but
understand.
people need to understand all the facts that are involved in this, and most people do not.
Well, I think the facts are already out there. They're making an earnest effort to make the district. They've made an earnest effort to pass the thing. I have not asked for anything going in there other than to try to be part of a solution. If it's not a long-term solution, then it's not. But I think a long-term solution, I think everybody in this room's looked at it. It has to come from somewhere. And I'm just offering to be part of that solution, even for a short term, until a viable solution comes up on the table.
Okay, Supervisor, I won't have anything, but, you know, it's really not fair to this side. We give it 15 minutes. I don't know, we gotta figure out what to do with the way this was passed. So, we need to hear from the board, a short vote, and then obviously this needs to get a healthy conversation. There's two parts there. Sure.
I had a question for what the 12-month proposal just to get on the record. Is that going to be ALS or BLS? Is that going to be 24/7? Is that going to be part-time? What's your...
It's going to be ALS 24/7. That's really the only kind of service we would offer. I think it's the only kind of service that in today's day and age, I think that's a minimum. I think it's sort of an all or nothing thing. I don't even think we would have support from NorCal if it was anything other than 24/7, 365 ALS coverage.
Richard?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chick made the statement that there isn't ambulance coverage in North Park County. I'd just like our emergency operations chief to address it. I don't think that's entirely accurate.
I'm Eric Ewing from Lassen County OES chief. As far as what Mid Valley has right now, we're talking about the Lassen County side of Mid Valley. They're utilizing mutual aid from neighboring entities, whether it's Modoc Medical from based on Last Frontier and what's now out of Alturas, whether it's Burning Ambulance or Mayor's Medical or Sender from the south side. It's based upon mutual aid requests for the closest forces, the closest resource. There's a system that's in place right now, and that was put in place at the time when aid and ambulance ceased offering. That's the current program we're under right now. It will continue to be until something else happens.
I just wanted to clarify that there is service.
If somebody else wanted to put an ambulance in there, like Mountain Life Life, they can do that.
It's an open market. It's
It's
not part of the
It's not part of the EA, so they can do it tomorrow. They don't have to make all these changes in transportation plan to do it. Do it.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. However, in order for them to make this commitment, they asked the county to address this issue. It was never in the RFP before.
I don't
And
think.
presently it has been in the RFP draft, and I don't see any justification for it other than to create a delay for patient care.
Well, I can't believe that the number of inter-facility calls, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's somewhere around 80?
24, I believe,
How
was
many?
last year, 24.
24. 24 is in an inter-facility call, and it's going to make you the money to put an ambulance in aid.
No, I
Absolutely
don't
not.
think we said that.
So that's not going to change it.
Well, are you telling me it's going to change for whoever the provider that comes in for the bid, that piece of the puzzle is the only piece that...
If we split it all up, yeah, it could cause a problem. It's not a lot of money for whoever gets the contract. And I don't think it's the best interest of the community to split it all up and just take little pieces of the pie away. Let's live it together, and we got a process. And I'll say again, Mountain Life is a great outfit. I've supported them for 16 years. I continue to support them. But they want us to change the process just for them. That's what I'm hearing. The transportation plan has been approved by this board last September. It was approved by NorCal EMS, who I sit on that board, I think in November. And you're asking us to go back and start over. Now, we don't have time. We're up against the curve right now to get this together, to get the RFP together and get it out. Our contract is up June 30th. We have to have a new guy in place then, whoever it be. It could be Mount Lifeline, it could be something, it could be, what is it, American out of Reading. There's many providers that can bid on this, and who knows if we'll get it. But you're asking us to change this, which we do not have time to do for your benefit.
I think that's an inaccurate statement. I
Correct.
think you have a process through the state that you've put in order. The RFP is not an exclusive document that hooks right to the proposal. That portion that you put in the RFP, that whoever, NorCal, or whoever decided to put it in, that's never been in there before. It's never been part of the 911 system, and it's an attempt to
Why didn't you comment on this?
Yeah.
Why didn't you comment on this when the board voted on it?
Well,
You had two chances. This board and NorCal EMS both had to approve it, and they have. And I've heard nothing about this till today.
well, I've spoken with two board members who said they weren't aware that those two paragraphs were in there when it came through.
They had this to read last September. If they voted on it, didn't read it, that's not my fault.
Please don't raise your voice. I'm not raising my voice with you.
I apologize.
I'd like to make a comment if I could, please. Keith Crosby with General Manager of Mountain Life Flight. In response to you, Mr. Pyle, we're not doing this for Mountain Life Flight. We're doing this for the citizens of Lassen County. Currently, right now, what we're talking about is transfers of patients that need care immediately from a different hospital. Okay, we're not talking about guys that broke their arm or broke a hip and they can take a slower route to Reno or wherever that is. We're talking about people that are potentially dying. Okay, any delays in that is unacceptable. Currently, we operate an ambulance that sits about 40 feet away from our crews out at the airport. All they have to do when they get that call is jump in the ambulance, go to the hospital, pick that patient up, get them out as quickly as they can to a better facility. Not a better facility, a facility that can handle the care. Okay? I don't care how you say it. The ambulance currently in this county, and one that would come if somebody else were to replace it, is not going to be parked outside the front door of the air crews that need to go, which is a delay. If they come from Susanville, it could be 6-8 minute delay at best. That's on best case scenario. But when they drop that crew off at the hospital, and then they take off for a 911 call, and our crews are sitting there, or somebody else's crews are sitting there for over an hour waiting for them to come back, we're talking about the most critical patients. We could be talking about my parents. We could be talking about your kids, or somebody else in this county that you see in Safeway every day. And they're not getting that, all for 24 calls. We're talking less than 1% of the business currently being done by our grounds provider. Less than 1%. A nonprofit organization running in the black, 1%. Less than 1%. Earlier you asked the young lady here before, what is the reason for what you're doing? My question is, what is the reason for these 24 calls being pulled away for better care of the most emergent patients? I've not seen that this is a patient care issue, which is what we're here for. We're not here for money. No, 24 won't make a big difference in our organization, and if it makes a big enough difference in their organization, maybe they need to do it a little differently, because it shouldn't. We run a lot less calls in Greenville. We make it work. So, yes, we can provide up there, and it's a heck of a lot more than the 1% of their organization if we're talking about what it takes to run up there. We're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of around 20%, 25%. So, yes, it makes a difference monetarily. We have to stay in business. But in the end, I just hope it's not my family that is having a delay due to an organization that cannot do it as fast as us. I don't care what their argument is. It's physically impossible.
Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with you 100%. It's all about care for the patient. It could be you, it could be me. You know, it could be any of us. I mean, if it saves one life, it's worth it. There's nothing I disagree with about what you said, but I'm not sure. I want to hear from somebody else to tell me that with what we have now in place and what we will have in place can't not do the same thing. I mean, I heard from you, that's one side. I want to hear from the other side.
I think we have the author of the draft RFP here.
And Richard, I just wanted to say now, what's the timing of all this? Because the way this needs to be hashed out.
The timing of the RFP?
No, I mean, like, if they come back at a future agenda, is it too late?
Oh, okay, so.
Because here is just receiving information.
Yeah, so.
And give direction.
Let me give you my analysis of that, and I'll defer to Mr. Nerat on some of the details. But we've approved the transportation plan, which is currently at the state pending approval. That is a component of the RFP that's being drafted. So a determination would need to be made whether the RFP, the draft RFP, could be changed to delete those paragraphs or change those paragraphs without a change to the transportation plan, or if that would require a change to the transportation plan. That's, I think, a fundamental decision. If that transportation plan needs to be changed, then we've got a real timing issue that will constrict how we can perform the RFP.
And when is that answer to that question?
To the state approval?
If you could change it without or with.
That, I would defer to Mr. Nerat on that specific question.
Rick Nerat from Chico State. I'm your ambulance consultant. Could you ask the question again?
Okay, so we have a transportation plan that we've approved as the state plan.
Correct.
Right. The question is, the Mountain Life people have asked to delete a couple paragraphs from the draft RFP, which has not been released. So the question is, does the deletion of those two require a new transportation plan? If so, what are the timing constraints with that? Or would this existing transportation plan allow for an RFP that doesn't have two paragraphs?
Both the plan and the draft RFP would have to go back through the process of the county recommending it to NorCal's board being the approving authority, and then submit it to the state for their review, which takes God knows how long. The reason I think it would have to is this is a very significant change in terms of the economic viability of the ambulance within Zone 1, within the EOA area. Okay? And we made a clear statement of intent within the plan that the exclusivity include all the possible calls to make sure that that ambulance is viable. And by removing any cost from it, we just make it more of a marginal operation and less likely that other ambulances will be able to submit proposals or that they'll be able to follow through on it and actually provide the service.
I have a question. Is there anything about the RFP process that would preclude Mountain Lifeline from making a proposal to offer ambulance services in the North County area conditioned on also the acceptance of their proposal for the exclusive operating agreement, having that as a component of it?
I think no.
Does my question make sense to you?
Yes, the reason I'm hesitating on is that the RFP will be specifically for Zone 1, the current EOA area, and if someone were to submit a proposal that was contingent on something else,
No, it's the other way around.
But because it's the other way around, where they're saying this is sort of an added value. If you accept our proposal here, we're also going to do that as an added value to the county. I see no reason they couldn't include that, but the evaluation process for the RFP would be based on what they said they would do within Zone 1. So I'm not sure if the reviewers would consider that as an added value to Zone 1, even though countywide it could. Thank you.
I was going to ask the same question. I mean, is there any way in the RFP to say, what can you extra do, as an ambulance service? Outside of what's in the RFP, add something if you got something to add.
We could, and we have an area in there. I'm trying to remember exactly how it's worded, but allowing them to say, wait a minute, let's try this, or have you thought of this?
Maybe somebody's got some better ideas.
Yeah, and they run the business. They have better ideas than we usually do. So, so we do have that allow them to do that. But whether it got into a whole new zone design that would go back to the changing the plan, that would probably be a problem.
I don't think you can do it. There's enough time. We're up against the curve now.
That's exactly the problem.
And you're the expert on me. You're the one doing it. Obviously, it's not me. But I'm glad to hear from you. And the other question was, this man brought up a very good point. The manager with Mountain Lifeline. He said they have an ambulance, at the airport, at the fixed wing there, and they can respond faster than our current provider can. Is that correct? Can they do something that our current provider, or whoever would be the next current provider, can't do?
I'm not really clear on it, because if you're picking the patient up at the hospital, if they said they were next door to the hospital, that would correct me more than they're located next to the flight.
Well, yeah, my guess is you got the hospital, the patient there, they got to get to Reno, Redding, whatever, so the ambulance will take it from there to the airport, and they'll get on fixed wing and whatever. But I think the helicopter station up there, so that wouldn't be included in this, if that's correct. No.
It's a continuity of care issue. You're talking about a critical care transport, somebody that needs something above and beyond what a paramedic, an ALS paramedic can do. You need a nurse, a flight nurse, specifically. Okay? Well, not specifically. You could take a regular nurse, but the hospital doesn't give that to the local agency. So for a fixed wing transfer, and it doesn't matter if it's Mountain Lifeline or another provider coming into town, the ambulance currently would have to go and pick up the flight crew at the airport, then go to the hospital and pick up the patient, and then take them back to the airport. That is currently happening with other fixed wing providers at the times that we can't be it because we're doing something else. And right now they're experiencing delays in getting the current provider to pick them up. They're dropping them off at the hospital. Sometimes they're responding to 911 calls while that crew is at the hospital, and they're standing around waiting for basically their taxi ride back out to the airport. And there is experiencing delays. That is currently what is happening.
One of the important things is to not compare the current provider to the RFP, because those are two separate things. The RFP that was issued in 2004, that was then extended for a full 10 years, did not include the critical care transport, didn't include oversight and monitoring. The new one does. So if we're having problems of that nature with the new provider under the new contract, that would be more of a concern. But what exists now does not.
You tell me the current provider is doing no inter-facility.
Yes, sir. What I'm saying is that it was not included within the exclusivity that was granted in 2004.
So that's basically open to anybody?
It is open to anyone, and that's why both of the providers are involved in it now, whereas under the new one, we, again, to maximize the revenue coming into the provider, we extended it, but that also includes the oversight process, which doesn't exist now.
Supervisor Chapman?
Yeah, if I could just jump in there, Mr. Chitty said earlier that